On his first day in office, President Trump declared a national emergency on the southern U.S. border and took aim at birthright citizenship. And in his inaugural address, Trump renewed the threat to seize the Panama Canal. Good afternoon. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. President Trump focused heavily on border security and immigration during his inaugural address. He has declared a national emergency exists on the southern U.S. border. He then signed scores of executive actions on the issues. NPR's Tamara Keith reports Trump is taking aim at one right that is protected by the U.S. Constitution.
Trump is already testing the limits of his executive power, including with an executive order that would end birthright citizenship for the children of people who are not in the country legally or who are in the U.S. lawfully but temporarily.
Birthright. That's a big one.
Birthright citizenship is written into the Constitution, and Trump admitted he doesn't know whether his order will hold up to legal challenge.
It's just absolutely ridiculous, but, we'll see. We have very good grounds.
The order was part of a stack of executive actions signed by Trump in the Oval Office just hours after being sworn in. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
The ACLU is filing suit over the birthright issue. President Trump has pardoned about 1,500 people convicted of or accused of involvement in the attack on the U.S. Capitol 4 years ago. 140 law enforcement officers were hurt at that time, including those with crushed spinal discs and traumatic brain injuries. Rioters who are imprisoned will be freed. That includes the man who attacked former Washington, D.C. police officer Michael Fanone with a stun gun. Fanone was tased repeatedly, and rioters threatened to murder him with his own gun. Fanone says he later had a mild heart attack. He has strong words about the president's executive action.
I have been betrayed by my country, and I've been betrayed by those that supported Donald Trump.
That audio is courtesy of CNN's Anderson Cooper, AC 360. President Trump also says the United States will once again consider itself a growing nation that expands its territory. John Otis reports in his inaugural address, Trump has renewed his threat to seize the U.S.-built Panama Canal.
The Panama Canal connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and is a key route for world shipping. It was built and operated by the U.S., but under a treaty signed by both countries in 1977, the canal was handed over to Panama. In his address, Trump insisted that U.S. ships are now being overcharged to use the waterway and claimed, without evidence, that it's controlled by China.
China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
However, Trump offered no details on how that would happen, and Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino, insisted that the canal belongs to Panama. For NPR News, I'm John Otis.
President Trump has started the process for terminating U.S. membership in the World Health Organization. As NPR's Gabriela Emanuel reports, his opposition to the UN agency that oversees global health goes back to the height of the COVID pandemic.
Trump has repeatedly criticized WHO, saying it was slow to respond to the pandemic and accusing the international body of being controlled by China. Trump's critics say the move will leave the U.S. uninformed and unprepared to deal with disease outbreaks.
This is the most cataclysmic decision of a president in my lifetime.
Lawrence Gosting is at Georgetown University.
The terms upon which we engage all of the health emergencies that affect America will be set by others at WHO. We won't be at the table. China will.
The process for the U.S. to withdraw requires a 1-year notification period, and this decision could face legal challenges. Gabriela Emanuel, NPR News.
The WHO says it hopes the U.S. will reconsider, and it looks forward to constructive dialogue with the U.S. to help benefit millions of people around the world. Former Florida Senator Marco Rubio is now the U.S. Secretary of State. He was sworn into office this morning by Vice President Vance. Rubio says his work as the nation's top diplomat is clear.
President Trump's made it very clear, everything we do, and this is true in government, but especially at the Department of State, everything we do must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? If it doesn't do one of those three things, we will not do it.
Meanwhile, Trump's nominee to become U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, is appearing for her Senate confirmation hearing this morning. Israeli forces have begun a new operation in the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian authorities say at least 6 Palestinians were killed in a strike and 35 wounded. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports from the West Bank the violence comes in the first few days of a ceasefire in Gaza.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office called it a, quote, significant military operation to combat terrorism. It said the name of the operation is Iron Wall, and the goal was to, quote, strengthen security in the West Bank. Jenin has long been a militant stronghold and the focus of many Israeli military raids since the war in Gaza began. Many Palestinians here worry that the Israeli military may shift focus over to the West Bank now that there's a ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, dozens of Israeli settlers wearing masks burned and damaged property in a Palestinian village over the weekend, according to a statement from the Israeli military. The military says it was deployed to disperse the attacks. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Ramallah.
There's a massive storm underway in the south. Winter storm warnings stretch from the southern point of Texas to North Carolina. There are blizzard warnings posted on the Gulf Coast from eastern Texas to Louisiana, not far from New Orleans. Houston is blanketed in snow. Houston Public Radio's Jack Williams reports freezing temperatures are expected for days.
The last time Houston saw snow was in early 2021, when more than 200 people died across the state when power went out in many places. Roads are covered in snow and local schools are closed. Houston Mayor John Whitmire says residents should stay put.
This is a serious Arctic blast. It's dangerous. It's life-threatening.
Warming centers are open across the city, and most businesses have told employees to stay home. Both of Houston's 2 big airports are closed. More than 3,000 power company workers are staged to deal with any major outages. For NPR News, I'm Jack Williams in Houston.
A former Georgia prosecutor goes on trial today, charged with interfering in the police investigation of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. He was the black jogger chased and killed by 3 white men in 2020. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports no arrests were made until months later, and only after video of the crime was leaked.
Former Glenn County District Attorney Jackie Johnson is charged with violating her oath of office and hindering a police officer. State prosecutors say she sought to shield Ahmaud Arbery's killers from arrest. One of them had previously worked as an investigator in her office. His father, Marcus Arbery, says it's important to hold the former prosecutor accountable.
To get 100% justice for Ahmaud.
Johnson, who is white, served as the Glenn County DA for 10 years. She has denied interfering and said she immediately recused herself from the Arbery case. Jury selection begins today. Debbie Elliott, NPR News.
The 3 men who murdered Arbery are serving life prison sentences. I'm Corva Coleman, NPR News in Washington.